Yeah.
Kathy, you're so funny.
Oh, we're just missing
John
Riser.
Riser. I don't even know how you say that with a straight face.
He's serious.
No, I know, but obviously,
Okay.
we got issues.
Who wants, since we don't have,
We don't have a chair on this.
we don't have a chair on this committee, who wants to start the meeting?
I'll start in the absence of a chair, I'll start the meeting. Christie? I just look at your agenda real quick.
Yeah, I meant to pass this out to everybody and
Oh.
you were the first one. Thank you, John.
Sure. Hey, in absence of a chairperson, I'm happy to call this meeting to order. At 11:30 a.m. on October 16th, the committee regarding a regular manager. And with that, I'd like to do a roll call. Clerk Flintoff here, Trustee Carey. Present. Trustee Noel.
Here.
Trustee Riser. Absent. Judy Monk. Here. Kathleen Brandt.
Here.
Ryan Yeaple.
Here.
We have quorum. First is a proposed agenda here. I would suggest that we add to new business the selection of a chairperson and secretary.
I would support.
Any other suggested amendments to the agenda?
Oh, meeting schedule, that would be the other thing.
Okay. So we'll have F1, selection of chair and secretary, F2, discussion to define certain criteria, and F3, next meeting dates. Okay, is there a motion to adopt the agenda as amended?
Motion to adopt.
Motion by Monk, is there support?
Support.
Support by Yeaple, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Motion adopted. Public comment. This is time for members of the public to speak for up to 3 minutes on any matter under the purview of this committee. Anyone in person? Yes.
Good morning.
Renee
And I'll
Kluback.
say thank you also. Renee Klubeck, Scio resident. I came to this meeting and the previous one also, but I just wanted to say that there's a great deal of confusion by the general public on the job description and availability to Scio Township residents for this continued position that's being reviewed. And I'm a messenger, just listening and learning. I know in the last 6 months, my availability as a resident was not to the manager. She was busier on other things. I know we have Chris. There's just confusion on not just the phone line, who to get to, but in general as a resident, who to go to. So I'm here to listen and tell other residents, but there has been a lot of conversation on what does this person do? Who is that person available to speak to? I mean, I can't go speak to the governor, walk up, make a phone call. You understand what I'm saying? So I'm here to listen and learn, and thank you for all the extra things you're doing right now. Thanks a lot.
Awesome. Thanks, Renee. Anybody online? Seeing none, moving on from public comment, there are no approval of the minutes. On to new business, selection of a chairperson and secretary. Are there nominations for either or both positions?
I nominate Kathleen Brandt.
Well,
I was gonna nominate you,
Judy, for one of
the board. You don't have a
secretary. I support the nomination of Kathleen Brandt as chairperson. Yes.
And Kathleen is open to that.
Do you accept the nomination?
Neither confirm nor deny.
Yes, I don't want to, but I'll do it.
All right.
Thank you, Kathleen. And is there a nomination for secretary?
I nominate Judy. Monk. Trustee elect, well, you're not elected yet, but soon to be trustee elect.
Judy, are you amenable to that?
Yes, I'll have to figure out what I have to do besides take notes.
Yep.
Okay, I support that. Okay, so, should we, take a vote to, appoint Kathleen Brandt as chairperson and Judy Monk as secretary of this committee?
Vote separately,
That's my motion together.
together, okay.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, motion by Flintoff, support by Noel. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Motion is adopted. I will turn over the facilitation of this meeting to Kathleen. Kathleen.
So it starts right away, huh?
I was a little surprised too.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, this is totally how I roll. Oh, yeah.
There you go.
Super normal for me. Yeah, let's go.
Okay, the next agenda item is F2, discussion only. Discussion to define certain criteria for a township manager. Should we discuss the charge that this committee has?
Yeah.
I think we have that in the,
The background that Christie provided. Okay.
Oh, the background here, it's on,
Mhm.
okay. I stole it from yeah, there's something else that I think it's the same thing, but. It is. Okay. I don't have what she's referring to yet.
There are 4 bullet points here.
Oh, this is this.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yep.
So I do. It's the same thing that was presented to the board.
Yes. What the board adopted and charged us to do.
Yeah. I have a suggestion
Mhm.
for there's been many different job descriptions. We have a job description in the ordinance.
I have them all.
Okay, yeah, but I think we all need to go through those.
Mhm.
Maybe not together, but separately, read through all of them.
Potentially.
I know you already have, I have, but the
Mhm.
newer members. I would need to reread it.
Sure. I think there may be kind of some broader questions we have to look at too, but I'll defer to you, Kathleen.
you suggested that we look at the resolution the board had previously created
Yes.
for the manager.
And the ordinance, because there's a job description in the ordinance.
If people
Yeah.
would like, I can give just a quick
That would be great.
timeline.
Yeah.
Okay. Having been the person who sued the board over this,
Hmm.
the details are fresh. All right, so the board must have been more than 20 years ago, adopted an ordinance. It's in chapter 2. It was when we first codified everything, Kathy. So it's like the first move to Muni code. And there were a lot of things in chapter 1 and 2 that were kind of picked up as templates. I looked for the origin, any board deliberation on what went into this job description. I saw none. It is what is the charter. It is what is typical for a charter township superintendent, which is set forth in the statute. And that is section 2-40 township manager. And that's what was in the book, on the books. I joined the township in June 2019 with Bryce Kelly, who left, and we started embarking on a search. It was at that time it came to my attention, we had no job description aside from this.
Bryce Kelly had never had what title? He had a manager.
Township manager,
He had-
and we had several managers. And from all of my research, it was just kind of understood. I never saw another job description more detailed than the township manager. Certainly what's in the ordinance is very broad. I have no objection to what's in the ordinance. I would just object to having a job description in our ordinance because it's uneven. It is the only job description we have in our ordinance. We have no other job descriptions in our ordinance. I think it makes sense. I would propose repealing this simply because I don't think it makes sense to have a job description in an ordinance. I think it should be done by resolution.
And job descriptions change as times change.
You should, yeah. But yeah, it's pretty, general. Then, we didn't hire a manager. And that's when the board that Kathy and I and Jack were on, we decided to, go without a manager. It was actually, for a little bit after a failed search with that younger guy, who did that search. And then decided, there was a potential offer, and it was a noteworthy 5-2 vote with Jack and I in agreement on the nose. Just like to highlight agreement, where we've had it, we tried to get through negotiations, and that conditional offer did not come to fruition with that person. That was that was early 2020, late 2019, right before the pandemic. We decided in January 2020 to temporarily divvy things up. I said, hey, I'll run point on fire. Jack will run point on utilities. We didn't have a utilities director or a fire chief at that time. So but that worked pretty well. And we went all the way through past the board transition. And at the board transition, we decided, Will and I had some good conversations about kind of looking at the position. And we started doing that and started looking at different models of, would we go forth without a manager? Would we go forth with a manager? If so, let's come up with a job description. Kathy and I and David Reed were involved in the administrative committee. We did that in 2021. This again, we were all remote. I think Will started coming in person in June 2021. And at that time, Will reached out to a wonderful resource, Diane Benson, who is an HR consultant. He knew, and she wound up coming to work for the township for a little bit. And she informed the administrator job description. And that was adopted unanimously by the board on July 25th, 2021. I'm just going to name these dates so that then when I send you copies of all this, you know where it falls in. So July 25th, 2021, it was a 7-0 vote to adopt the administrator job description. And at that same meeting, we approved Amy Sell to go recruit for an administrator. That search resulted, that is the job description that David Rowley responded to. And that is what we advertised. On August 17th, 2021, with less than 7 days' notice, the supervisor called a special meeting. At that special meeting, he brought forth an action to double his salary. And there was a resulting lawsuit brought by Kathleen Brandt on that. And he also put forth a resolution to modify the administrator's job description. So that first modification was August 17th, 2021. And that was the first time that, my perspective, this job description was weaponized against my position. Of course, I think, as you know, I've been trying to professionalize the financial management of this organization since I got here. Was running into some internal blocks. And those kind of came to the board table. So certain things started being inserted, such as control, ultimate authority over BSNA, which includes the assessing rules, which are the documents of the supervisor, the tax rolls, documents of the treasurer, and the journals and ledgers over which the clerk's responsible.
It was modified by word of mouth or actually by resolution?
By resolution.
By resolution, okay.
Yep. And then, in December of 2021, and frankly, and I've said this publicly and documented, it's, as our township attorney, was advising the supervisor and me and others, certainly the supervisor, started looking for other legal advice. on these matters because there was so much conflict. Jim Fink did a wonderful job of providing good sound advice all along the way. It was not always followed. The supervisor brought a proposal in December of 2021 to hire an additional township attorney. Over a split vote, I dissented, to hire Mike Homier. So a guy from Grand Rapids. He reached out to many other local attorneys who had said no. He said yes. We don't need to talk about Mike. But Mike was an additional township attorney who then in December, right after that, David Rowley started. So David Rowley, we had advertised that unanimous July 25th, 2021 position. But by the time he came in the door in December, there was an additional township attorney, changed job description, and all of this conflict.
Mhm.
He came in, and as we know, he resigned in protest in May of 2022.
Mhm.
By February of 2022, and it's actually February 22nd, 2022, the supervisor brought forth another resolution to amend the administrator's job description again. This was without the recommendation of David Rowley, the position in it, and came unclear where it came from other than to further control and interfere with my job duties. And I've objected on the record to each of these under MCL 41.75A because the board was delegating duties statutorily assigned to me. In those bullet points, it added things like shifting supervision of the finance director, the position then vacant, away from the clerk to the administrator. David Rowley had not asked for that, moving FOIA coordinator, moving some other things. So both August 17th, 2021, February 22nd, 2022, those are the two resolutions. I finally filed suit against the township in April of 2022, against the board for interfering with my statutory duties, which I'm personally responsible for carrying out. At that point, by May 2022, as we all know, unauthorized entries into the general ledger. The unauthorized entries continue to today. Just the last tax bill, we were supposed to by ordinance put on the unpaid utility bills. By ordinance, we must onto the tax bill. They were properly put on. The treasurer staff went into the journals, I will say my journals, and undid them, pulled them back. The audit findings go on and on and on. And so this has continued.
Okay.
In January 2023, it was modified again. And the January 2023 administrator's job description is what the board used to hire Joyce, and that is the current one. It changes some words, but it has the same meaning there. And since, you know, this has been going on for so long, I will just say that there is no control over the journals and ledgers. There are people making entries who should not be, and there are people who do not have access who should. So clearly, I mean, my number one priority is to, you know, remove those. They're small bullet points and we don't need to spend a ton of time talking about it, but that's my number one priority so we can secure the books.
I might make a suggestion. Based on that history, I think we should be looking at the first job description that was created with the benefit of Brian Benson, the committee of yourself, David Reed, Kathy Noel. Can that be our starting point for evaluating the future position?
It's the July 25th, 2021.
Yes.
I think that along with our ordinance, because we're living with our ordinance until we
And-
repeal it.
And our ordinance, clearly we need to modify that so it doesn't reflect a charter township. We are not a charter township.
Correct.
So if we could take that as our starting point, of course, we can educate ourselves on what the additions that were made
I would support that.
Yeah, I
For
think that's
sure.
very reasonable,
Mhm.
yeah. And we were all in agreement. That was a 7-0 vote.
What was that, Kathy?
At that time, the job description way back, first one,
7-0.
it was a 7-0 agreement on affirming it, so.
There it is.
And one other point. I don't know how many audits we've had and also Bethany's verbal reviewing our policies and procedures and whatnot. And the common complaint or point that they have brought forward is the lack of internal controls. And we have to look at this job description and also the others and make sure that we are cleaning up. I don't want to hear that issue anymore. I don't want to hear that from the state or from any other contractor that says you have lack of internal controls.
So definitely we will do that for the next manager position that's in our charge, right? And the
Chrissy's
board,
making copies of those. two
I'm
things
sure
right
the
now.
board will address the repeated lack of internal controls, the new board.
Oh,
One
absolutely.
way or another.
Mhm.
Yeah, because there's two ways to fix that. Supposed to.
Probably more than two.
Mhm.
Yeah.
But I'm super interested in hearing both of your ideas.
The other, I think Renee's comment and input is a really important one about the reporting structure and the action. I don't know if it needs to be reflected in the job description per se, but I can't agree with her more about the residents' access to the manager and what role he or she plays in.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Because there were walls, there were people, there were messages that the past manager built or were built for her. That's the
Well,
part.
and it wasn't just her, it was Bryce Kelly as well. So there's a
Okay,
theme.
so that's why, so I don't wanna always just say, we don't want what we had. It's what we want.
Agreed.
Absolutely.
And, you know, sometimes politicians, it's like, we approach it as we don't want it. No, it's what we want.
Yeah,
As opposed to eliminating what. we
That
didn't.
I agree.
provides a roadmap.
You commented about Bryce, but Bryce was good with people.
mhm.
I mean,
Some people would disagree with that.
Yeah.
okay,
You know,
okay.
and I wanna have us not get too.
I know,
too
yeah, I know.
personal. I mean,
So I'm just saying,
There's a lot of things that Bryce did not share with
I
the board.
know. Oh, I know.
so I
And
think.
that's what Judy is.
I think what it would be
About
helpful
why.
talking about too is what we do want, Judy, and I agree. Like, because it's been an interesting perspective for me to hear from Renee and from you about, the public wants to be able to pick up the phone and, talk to the person they're paying for, talk to any of us, as you should
Sure.
be able to.
Mhm.
I will say, I've seen 5 people in this position in the last 5 years, and certainly some people are much more, pop up to the front counter, how can I help you, troubleshoot? Some people not, and I've also seen over the last 5 years, like, we have not gotten our bang for the buck. I mean, I have not found, and it's part of it's because there's been so much transition, but I have not seen the value. So one thing I want to see is if we go forward with this position, it's got to be a position that adds value. And we're so different than we were. We used to be smaller staff where maybe the manager was the one person who'd had some experience in government. We have a lot of other professional staff now
Mhm.
that we didn't have. And so I think the role, what we need the manager to do has changed.
Yes, I think their role, because we will have experience in the supervisor role and the clerk role and some experienced trustees,
Mhm.
that manager has the opportunity to be an ambassador,
Thank you.
to be a face of the township,
Thank you.
much more than maybe in the past. The other thing I would use as a resource document
Mhm.
is the document that Mr. Raleigh wrote
Yes.
as he was on his way out. He wrote, and for someone who did not know him, but for someone who could just get a recap
He was great.
of what was and wasn't being done and what he, I mean, was knowledgeable. I could tell just from what he was saying is he had a handle on things. And so I think that document was succinct, articulate, and gives us a chance to see what,
Christie's
Mike
gonna
goes into
circulate it.
okay, it's an excellent.
Yeah,
His exit memo.
I think there was,
Yeah,
yeah,
that's
Yeah,
a memo. and
Yeah, I
that's
don't
what we
remember what it
call
was called, but it was very good.
So that's just the one that you were referring to when I
That's
walked
just,
in?
yes,
Okay.
yes. Mhm.
So that
I'm pretty sure it's.
can be a roadmap for the new board, but we would take anything out of there that's related to the township manager.
Yeah,
Okay, so as a starting point, we're looking at the job description that was unanimously approved on June the 20th, July 27th, as well as David Raleigh's recommendation.
but if I remember correctly, David Rowley's exit memo was more of what the township should be doing, not so much about his job description.
Well, that's why I said if there's anything. in
yeah,
it-
it's just a little check mark to say, okay, have we counted? Because he had, I thought he had his handle
Oh, absolutely.
on things that weren't being done and
Mhm.
what needed attention.
Yeah, he was solid.
Yeah.
So for this committee, since we do not have familiarity to verbalize right now, the unanimous job description, I can't talk about that until I read it closely and reread David Raleigh's closely, so.
And if I could say one thing about this job description that is different than what we have now, is this was an administrator. And so at this time, the supervisor was still considered the chief administrative officer under MCL 168, the Uniform Budgeting and Accounting Act, which means only that the supervisor is responsible for preparing the proposed budget. The change in naming it a manager statutorily just triggers that MCL 168 requirement.
Now, are there any statutes that you would refer us to say, because we're not rewriting the clerk job description, but we want to make sure there's nothing in this job description that
Mhm.
Encroaches.
that encroaches
Sure.
on other statutory assignments for the supervisor
asking
and for the
that.
clerk.
So 41.75A,
41.
MCL 41.75A. It's very simple. I'm gonna paraphrase, the board can hire staff, including a manager, and assign them any duties as long as they're not otherwise assigned. The clerk's duties are primarily in 41.65.
1.65.
41.65. And I would say,
Charter Township.
41 is for general, 42 is for charter.
Thank you.
mhm,
And how about for the supervisor? Are there statutory?
It's, there is a statute, but then it's peppered, there's other duties that are peppered through different.
Okay, so we
Yeah,
just have to make
So
sure
if you
we're
go-
not approaching.
yeah, you know, the
those.
red book, Judy, Kathleen, you have the red book. The red book is from the MTA. It's an old
Okay.
version. We have to wait for the new version to be published in November, December. But it lays out it's an easy read of
Okay.
what the statutory duties are.
And the same with the treasurer, that we're
Yeah.
not,
yeah.
you know.
Exactly. And I would say, Judy, like the example was like, when giving the board ultimate authority via a staff person over BSNA, I would say that encroached on the supervisor's administration of the assessing roles, the treasurer's administration of the tax rolls, and the clerk's administrations of the journals and ledgers, because you talk about internal controls, segregation of duties. You definitely you don't want a political majority directing the accounting records, the assessing
Right.
rolls, or the tax rolls.
Right. Yeah, so so that's kind of another guardrail
Yep.
for us. They're not gonna tell us what to put in, but they're guardrails about. That's,
Judy, if you go to, look up the MCL, or for townships, it's chapter 41, and that's just for general law townships, and that,
It's short.
okay.
yeah.
I've
it
read
is.
I've read some of them in pockets,
Yeah.
but not in this context.
And there's some legalese, but that's where the red book is a little bit easier
Okay.
to read, but,
Okay,
and also the MTA, on their website, I think it's called, if you're thinking of running for office or something, then it breaks down in very short, bullet points
Okay.
for each.
Okay, so that discussion on job description needs to be at a future meeting as we educate ourselves,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So let's continue with these bullet points, determine the salary range. I don't think we're in any position to determine that. Right?
Yeah.
If anybody want to.
You know, if I could just say, I certainly don't have any numbers or sense, but I would say one mistake I think we've made before is trying to say, this is like a city administrator or a county administrator. And I don't think that's necessarily true. I think sometimes it's gonna really depend on what we're asking this person to do. We're also gonna be hiring a finance director who will probably be a CPA with a lot of years of experience.
Mhm.
I mean, I would think that will be a highly paid
Position.
position. So I just think we need to get away from this idea that there is that the board, you know, is the legislative executive body. And there's only so much that can be delegated to a manager. It's not like a city or a county where they're going to have, you know, power to authorize expenditures and things like that. So
Right.
I
So
just
let's
think-
not, let's not fall into a
fall into that.
false equivalency.
Yeah, it's a false equivalency.
Jess, you bring up a really good point, that the finance director would, you know, have whatever job description, but so we're looking at the manager's job description, but I think that we also need to look at the other job descriptions and make sure, because the finance director or and other job descriptions, so that we're not assigning that to the manager without understanding.
Yeah, definitely. And the finance director, we have a good job description. We're gonna, I hope to bring that to the new board,
Mhm.
for approval. So we'll be looking at these in tandem. And yeah, I mean, we've just grown so much as a township too,
Yeah.
with new positions.
Right,
Even since
before-
this.
And we're
Mhm.
starting new, so we don't want, I mean, before we pretty much put everything under the manager, because we didn't have these other positions. So we didn't have a project manager, we didn't have, well, Parks Director at one point, that's a relatively.
We
new-
didn't have department
I was gonna
heads
say,
empowered
yeah.
to really manage their budgets, and we've really done a good job of building that expectation.
competent people.
Yeah,
And I'll say, and Christie's, how the office coordinator role has been nurtured by the board and has also grown, which
Mhm.
changes the manager
Yes.
role. I mean, some of that is because Joyce said, Christie, you know, you do, and so she, for me, and she knows this, was my de facto manager. Because I would call, the same Renee, yeah, I would call, leave a message for what I thought was Joyce, and Christie would call back. And on behalf of Joyce. So the office coordinator job whether Christie was in it or not, grew. And so I think by having someone quite competent in that job, it also impacts the
Mhm.
manager job.
Agreed.
But, back in, the administrative or administration committee, we had a model. There was a couple models, but
Mhm.
could we look at a model or recreate a model for where we are now?
I can bring the best last models from that committee.
Well, because, yeah, if we're talking about making sure that the manager doesn't have somebody else's job duty, because we don't have that position, but that the model, and it's been a while, long time since I've looked at those models, but if we put like a mind map or whatever of employees.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd be happy to
For
pull that out.
For
For
our next
discussion.
meeting, we'll have full discussion on the unanimous job description, statutory requirements, other positions like finance director and models, okay?
Yes.
Okay.
And we didn't have an HR director back then either.
Right.
I mean,
No.
yes,
Well, we have an HR generalist, but
Okay.
which makes you so good correcting your own title on the
I
spot.
want to move this discussion on because some of us have a prior commitment.
we have a barn date.
Okay, so, two last items, determine the method of recruiting and hiring and the time frame. If I might suggest we jump to time frame, I don't think we're ready to discuss method of recruiting and hiring
I agree.
because we don't have a job description yet.
Agreed.
But we can broadly talk about the time frame for the committee's work from start to hiring. So from this point until we get hiring, we should put some broad parameters. So we have a major election coming up, right? Early voting starts on October 26th. That's a constraint for some of the members to be able to participate.
You're gonna have to hear.
Yes.
Should we revisit this the next time we meet, the time frame?
Well, at the very least, can we define when we think our next meeting would be?
Yeah, and I think, thank you for laying this out, Kathleen. I think we have some pretty beefy stuff to talk about in terms of what we want in the job. And so I don't know how much time that's gonna take, but I certainly don't think that we're gonna be ready to start. I don't know that we're gonna finalize a job description at our next meeting, say.
No.
I mean, I would think that we might need 2 meetings for that-ish.
Yeah,
Because we need to kind of, get kind of, I want a little more information from department heads about kind of what they need, Aurora, some kind of input, because I don't think we've really defined what this position is gonna do.
And could we, have the ad hoc committee right before the manager committee, like we only need a half hour,
Certainly, absolutely.
just like what we did today.
So we left that to the call of the chair.
Right, well, right,
And
but
if it were necessary, I'd be fine with that.
since we're going to meet anyways, we might as well touch base on the ad hoc. And then I think thinking about your schedule coming up, or what you're going through, and maybe we should meet after the election for the permanent, that it gives us enough time to read through everything, make notes. It gives you enough time to, with everything on your plate.
I would support that as long as, like, right after this meeting, let's all share out the resources we just noted.
yeah.
Okay, the statutes, the manager reports, the models, and then let's all really commit to looking at all that stuff and really thinking and.
Yeah,
about
let's
it.
do our, let's do our homework, because otherwise, we just take too long. If we do our homework on it and have some questions, go to the people that might actually be, like, if I have questions for you, there's no sense in having 7 people listen to me ask
Mhm.
you one question or
Right.
one question. So if we do our homework,
Right,
and use everyone's time, real. respectfully.
Yes.
Okay, so we're gonna meet after November 20th. In our charge, it says that,
I'm sorry, Kathleen, to clarify, are we meeting after November 5th or after November 20th?
I thought it was after election day.
okay.
I'm
Fine.
open to either, but
Oh, no, that's fine. Is that what you intended?
Sure, meet there, and then we have our board meeting November 13th. It could even be that Thursday or Friday after that board meeting, or,
Meeting's on the 12th.
I'm sorry, I don't know why I keep saying
We've
that.
got
That's
one-
my RAC meeting, I think.
Okay, so we'll
One of
meet
those-
after the election. Our charge says that Christy Aiken will assemble the committee. So can we ask her to find a common date?
Yeah,
Okay, thanks,
so
Chris.
after,
Oh.
While we're all here.
that's fine too.
that's
thank
easy.
I will say that the DDA has a meeting on Tuesday, the 12th.
Yeah.
Here,
It's,
so that is one thing to keep in mind, in that week of the 12th is what you guys are.
I
looking at.
prefer after the board meeting. It's a lot of work to get
yeah.
at this point.
Okay, so after the
So what about the
13th
13th?
and beyond.
Well, I have a RAC, well,
That's
they
not
would
till
be,
evening.
they would be in the, during the day.
Mhm.
This
What
would
else
be-
is on that day? Anything else?
management
We have the
meeting.
management meeting at 1:30.
Yeah, and that morning I have a mock election. for some
Okay.
Fourth graders.
Okay, so
Friday.
we can, how about Friday, there you go, how about Friday the 15th?
That's
Sure.
fine. It's fine.
That sounds great.
Pick a time.
You wanna do the 11 and then 11:30?
Yeah, let's do that. Both things.
Great.
All right, I'll get those out in the peak.
Excellent, thank you.
Thank you,
And
Christy.
then you'll do the ad hoc agenda? and
I'll
you'll
do the ad hoc agenda,
This
yeah.
management meeting agenda, just send me, he just types it up and then I put it together in peak. No problem.
Okay. All right, so
Okay, so,
11:30?
the meeting before that will be Mr. Hathaway's final supervisor meeting, or will he
The
convene the one on the swearing in?
No,
Convenes that one.
I'm gonna convene that. I was thinking of inviting County Clerk Larry Kestenbaum to swear us in. I haven't asked him yet.
Okay, so,
that'd
but
be nice.
Mr. Hathaway concludes at that point
At noon.
at noon
Yeah.
on the 20th.
Yeah.
Is that meeting?
11:59.
Okay, so it's,
Yeah, so it'll be a meeting of the new board.
yeah, okay.
Are we just gonna get sworn in or
No.
we gonna deal with substantive issues?
I think we're gonna deal with whatever we decide to deal with as a new board. I'll be proposing to bring a couple items to that board meeting.
I'll be
And who will you
privately
be
paying
that?
for
I mean,
lunch
who will,
for any of the
so
members
to
that
Will
might
would
be
be
here and
the
public.
convener.
So sweet.
Sorry.
No, it's
off
okay.
track.
No, it's not off track. I think the supervisor will facilitate that meeting, so Jillian.
Okay, yeah, okay.
And I think our rules of order stand, until we change them, which state that, between our rules of order and our resolution, it's the office coordinator and the supervisor
Okay.
who pull together the proposed agenda, but we certainly have a standing understanding that any board member may bring anything
So
to
for
the
that
meeting. So I would say
meeting,
for that one, I'm happy to add anything anybody
Okay.
has.
As long as it doesn't make the meeting go till 1 o'clock in the morning.
Well, if we start at noon, well, that's.
we start at noon.
Okay.
Yeah, we're gonna just.
I'll see if I can
12-hour
work on,
meeting.
I'll see if I work on a second meal.
Okay, so that's the end of our business.
Motion to adjourn?
No.
Oh, public comment.
Hey, you're not the chair of this one. Listen to the chair.
You're not the boss this time.
Take a step back. Stand down.
Do we have any public comment?
It's so nice to have people who joke.
Oh, there's gonna be a lot of that.
You have nobody online.
All right.
Okay. Motion to adjourn by April, second by,
I'll second.
all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Meeting adjourned at 12:20.
Good job.
Thank you, everybody. Thanks, Catherine.
Thank you.
Thank you, Judy. Thanks, Christy. Thanks, everyone.
Yeah.
The rest of it. next meeting.
Are you going to?